Ladies and gentlemen, in my first story, I'm going to tell you about a trip I took to Portugal with my ex. My husband and I went there for our anniversary. If only I'd known it would be our last, I'd have cancelled everything. Now I'm all alone with my children, but no husband. I sometimes think I'm dreaming that after 10 years, he'd just dump me like that. I messed up big time and I don't think he'll ever forgive me. The way he looked at me, he was disgusted. He was such a loving guy and very nice man. He was my man, but not anymore. If I could go back, I'd do everything differently. And I kissed the surfer. I don't even know what came over me. It's all so confusing. I know the surfer was handsome, but that didn't give me the right to kiss another man while I was married. It was my husband's anniversary, and I just couldn't stop thinking about the kiss. I know I can't undo it, but I'd really like to know how I should have handled things. If anyone has been in a similar situation, please tell me how you deal with the guilt and regret. I'm a 27-year-old woman who met my ex. My husband is male, 30, and we met when I was 16. We grew up in the same neighborhood in New York City and went to the same high school. He was a few grades ahead of me, but we still started dating. He approached me, and I thought he was just trying to play me. He was very handsome and fit, and he also played football. Every time he asked me out, I rejected him. I didn't want to be on his hit list. I played hard to see if he was serious about me, but he wasn't. He never gave up after a few months, so I gave in. He was so romantic, he took me out whenever he could. He bought me flowers. I was so in love with him. He graduated from high school and went to the Culinary Institute of New York to learn more about cooking. He wanted to be the world's greatest chef and expand the family business. When he graduated, I thought our relationship was over, but he came back for me on my high school graduation. He proposed. I couldn't believe it. I didn't know what I wanted to do, so I didn't go to college. I moved in with my ex. My husband and I dated for a couple of months. I had already met his family and vice versa, and we decided to get married after 7 months. We loved each other so much that some people even called us twins or siblings because we were inseparable. He would go anywhere and everywhere with me, but that was before we had children. We got married on our first anniversary, and it was the happiest year of our lives. He was really supportive and loving, and everything was perfect until our 10th anniversary approached. I don't even know if I remembered our anniversary date when Marcus was so distant and destructive. We had perfect children and a perfect home. I couldn't believe it had been 10 years since we got married. He was my best friend, my keeper, and my strength. He was and still is a good father to our children, but I ruined all that. Our love for each other had only grown stronger with each passing year. We had 2 beautiful children, a lovely home, and a happy, comfortable life together, but as our anniversary approached, I couldn't shake the feeling that something was off, Marcus. He'd been distant and preoccupied for weeks, and I couldn't understand why. I tried to brush it off as just a phase, but deep down I knew something was wrong. I decided to plan a special anniversary trip to the beach, hoping that it would bring us closer together and reignite the spark in our relationship. I booked a beautiful beachfront house complete with a private pool and a stunning view of the ocean. I spent hours planning the perfect itinerary, complete with romantic dinners, sunset walks on the beach and relaxing spa treatments. When we arrived, I was filled with excitement and anticipation. Marcus seemed a bit distant and distracted as we packed our bags and headed out the door. But I tried not to let it dampen my spirits as we arrived at our destination. The beach was absolutely breathtaking. The sun was shining, the waves were crashing, and the salty ocean air filled my lungs. I felt a sense of peace and tranquility wash over me, and I knew that this was exactly what we needed. We spent the first few days of our trip relaxing and reconnecting. We took long walks on the beach, held hands, and we chatted about our dreams and aspirations. It felt like the old us was back, and I was filled with hope and joy. I wasn't sure if my husband was really happy or if he was just pretending to be happy for my sake. But whatever mood he was in was great, because we enjoyed our day until he excused himself and said he had to make an important call to check on his hotel and restaurant business. I understood and excused him because I knew how much he loved his business, so he would always be fussy about it and check how it was every now and then. He was too overprotective of it. I remember when I used to grumble about him spending too much time at the hotel or restaurant. He'd say that these two businesses were like his first children, so he had to look after them, even if he had managers. The day before, my husband and I were taking a walk. As it happened, he knew my husband from social media and the papers because his restaurant and hotel business was well known. He was planning on opening another. At the restaurant in Portugal, he was really friendly and the conversation was flowing. I was just washing my eyes and seeing what others were not seeing. I know it was wrong, but the truth must be told. There are perfect God's creatures out there, and it's not a crime to feed your eyes a little. As we talked, I found myself feeling drawn to Jake in a way that I hadn't felt in years. He was charming, confident, and had a sense of adventure that was infectious. I couldn't help but be drawn to him even though I knew it was wrong. My husband, he wasn't paying attention to me anymore. It was like we were on a business trip, not celebrating our anniversary. He was always talking about work. Even in our bedroom, it was like he was bored because it was always a business conversation. Every now and then, there was nothing about us or our intimate moments. I thought the trip would help us reconnect, but I guess I was the only one trying. Then something unexpected happened. We were sitting by the pool enjoying a drink, when Marcus, my husband, went to make an important call. I saw him as a handsome surfer with pierced blue eyes and a chiseled jawline. I had already seen him, so it was the second time I'd seen him, and I couldn't stop thinking about him. He was tall with broad shoulders and piercing blue eyes that seemed to see right through me. We started chatting, and before I knew it, we were laughing and joking like old friends. He had a perfectly built body with a sexy fit body shape, like the Italian actor Simone Suss from the 365 Days film. He passed to greet us, and I couldn't help but stare at his perfect body. My husband's body was flamesand, but the surfer took my attention that day. I regret ever looking at another man, other than my own. We had planned to spend 2 weeks in Portugal with I just wanted more time to myself, and to spend more quality time alone without the children. It was great. My main aim was to bring back the Marcus I had fallen in love with, and to bring back the spark that was there when we started dating. I needed my husband back, and my plan actually worked until he told me after 3 days of us in Portugal that he had to go back to New York. I couldn't believe him. I couldn't say no. So he went back to New York on his own, and I stayed in Portugal to finish off my holiday. I'd been interested in surfing since I was a kid but never had the chance to learn. I found it fascinating, and it would have been great to learn how to surf while I was enjoying the trip, even though my husband had left. Luckily, Jake agreed to teach me how to surf, and I was happy about that. That's how I met Jake. As the days passed, my husband was still not back, so I found myself spending more and more time with Jake, the surfer. We would go for walks on the beach, have long conversations by the pool, and even go on a surfing lesson together. It was exhilarating. I felt alive in a way I hadn't for years, but despite the excitement, I couldn't shake the feeling that I was doing something wrong. I loved Marcus, and I knew I shouldn't have kissed another man, no matter how handsome and charming he was. But I'd always felt dissatisfied in my marriage, and that kiss had made me realize I deserved more. It had already been a week in Portugal. I only had a few days left to enjoy my holiday, and I was really starting to miss Portugal. I'd been trying to reach my husband, but he wasn't answering his phone or going straight to voicemail. I was getting more and more worried when I couldn't reach him on his office numbers. At first, I thought something must have happened, but as time went on, I started to suspect that he was cheating. As time went by, I started to think that he was cheating on me. I couldn't shake off that feeling. Some of you know how often women are right about these things. If you think your partner is cheating, it's probably true. I was spending more time with Jake because I was feeling lonely and stressed about my husband. I was also getting distracted by thoughts of him cheating on me. Jake was a great way to forget about my husband's disappearance. What infuriated me the most was that when I called home to check on the children, they told me that Marcus was around and he was fine. My instincts told me something was wrong. It hurt to know that I was worried about someone who didn't even think about his own wife. That's what made me spend more time with Jake. Jake and I were really enjoying ourselves, so one night he took me out to introduce me to one of the clubs near the hotel I was staying in. I got too comfortable with him. We were like best buddies, and I had so much fun in that club that I found myself drinking all my sorrows away. Marcus was stressing me out. I couldn't shake off the feeling that he was doing something wrong back at home. I really hoped and prayed that he wasn't doing something that would jeopardize our relationship and destroy our marriage. After I was tired of drinking and dancing, Jake and I sat down and talked. He was not just a lousy surfer, he was really smart too. As we were talking, I don't even know what came over me, but the more he was talking, the more I wanted to taste his sexy pinkish lips. They were really appetizing. I won't lie, I don't know if I saw them like that because I was kind of tipsy because of the cocktails I was drinking, but I really wanted to kiss the surfer. I was a bit tipsy from the cocktails I'd been drinking, but I really wanted to kiss the surfer. I was acting a bit sluttishly, right? I'd been staring at him, well, more like his lips, until I couldn't hold myself anymore, so I kissed him. I don't know what came over me. I really regret it. I couldn't believe it, but despite the excitement, I couldn't shake the feeling that I was doing something wrong. I loved Marcus, and I knew that I shouldn't have been kissing another man, no matter how handsome and charming he was. I'd just kissed a handsome surfer on our 10-year anniversary trip, which was a very low and cheap move for me, but I can't take it back. It was a low and cheap move for me, but I can't take it back. I enjoyed it. My husband was a great kisser, and I gave him that, but Jake the surfer was the best. So, as we were spending a lot of time together, Jake and I were hanging out. There was this time when Jake was off duty, so he came by. I had just a couple more days left on my holiday trip, and something unexpected happened. We were sitting by the pool when Jake took my hand and looked into my eyes. He said, in a low, serious voice, "I have feelings for you, and I want to be with you. Will you be my girlfriend?" My girlfriend and I were pretty shocked and a bit confused because the guy had seen me with my husband. It was just that my husband had left to attend to business. I couldn't believe that he would just drop such a huge hint to a married woman just because I kissed him. Well, more like we kissed each other. I only kissed him once, but that shouldn't have made him think I could be his girlfriend. I mean, I was married and I loved my husband, so I was already regretting what we did. If my husband found out, a lot would be destroyed. I won't lie and say the kiss was sloppy or bad because it wasn't. I wasn't sure what to make of Jake, not as a boyfriend. When he confessed, I was taken aback, unsure of what to say. I loved JN, but I couldn't deny the feelings I had for Jake. I was torn and didn't know what to do. It was like I was stuck between a rock and a hard place. My husband had started. He was pulling all kinds of stunts, but I didn't have any proof that he was cheating. I just had this feeling that something was up. I really don't know when or how my husband saw me or came back, because I was not expecting him at all. He was supposed to come back about a week ago, but he didn't. He just showed up out of the blue. By the time I was due to go back home, I was really angry at him because he had been ignoring my calls and texts the whole time. Then he decided to just show up at a later stage. The worst part was that Jake and I were sitting a bit too close to each other, so Marcus saw that and got pretty angry. Things went downhill pretty fast. My husband was just in awe, and if I were to lie and tell that famous phrase, "It's not what you think or how it looks," and try to explain what had happened, knowing very well what had happened, Marcus saw it, so it was not going to work because he had caught on. Marcus asked what was going on as we sat there. I froze. I'm not one to get tongue-tied. I always have answers for everything, but that day I was stuck. My mind went into another freezing zone and I couldn't think properly. My heart was beating pretty fast. I didn't know what to do. Jake just sat there and looked at his husband. I couldn't believe the guy. He should have just apologized and left, but no, he sat there waiting for whatever Marcus was going to do. After some time, I managed to contain myself and came back from I was in a bit of a daze, so I hesitated, not wanting to hurt Marcus, but also not wanting to lie to him. I've been spending time with Jake, I said, my voice trembling not because I was scared of Marcus, but because I was scared of the outcome that would take place. I didn't want to lose Marcus over a surfer. Yes, the guy was charming. Marcus was my rock, so I couldn't let a guy I'd only just met come between us. I had to be honest and hope for the best. 2 days later, my husband and I went back to New York. He didn't speak to me for the whole 2 days. On the way back home, he only glanced at me with eyes full of suspicion and anger. He was pretty angry at me. I know I had done him wrong, but if he was there with me, none of that would have happened. I couldn't tell him that though, because it would sound like I was selfish for wanting to spend more time with him. He decided to put his business first and put his wife on the back burner. Over the next few days, my husband became more and more distant. He stopped talking to me and started spending all of his time with our kids. I knew that something was wrong, but I had no idea what it was. I had done him wrong, but I told him the truth. I sensed that Jake was hiding something from me. The way he was acting made me think that he was lying. I didn't know that Marcus would not believe the truth that I had told him and actually go investigate me and Jake. So after a week of us back at home, he came back from work and asked to speak to me. I wouldn't have agreed to a chat with him if I'd known what he wanted to talk about, but I didn't know, so he came over and told me that he knew about what I did. I started getting confused because obviously he knew what I did. I mean, he saw me kissing another man, and I had thought we were past that. But then, he told me that he'd found out about what was going on between Jake and me. He said he couldn't believe the lie I'd told him, so he decided to investigate to see if what I did with Jake was just a kiss or if there was more to it. He told me he'd seen a video of me at the club kissing the surfer. I couldn't believe it. He said I went behind his back and did that. He even told me I was just like all the other loose and cheap women who are always looking for fun and good times with other men. That really stung because the way he said those words, it was like he was swearing at me. It hurt me to hear him say that, but the voice that he said those words in a mix of anger, disappointment, hurt, and sadness. I knew then that I had hurt my husband in the worst way possible. I felt a stinging sensation in my eyes as his words hit home. I'd never been one to cheat on my husband, but I'd let my desires get the better of me. I tried apologizing. I tried to explain to him, but he wasn't having it. He wanted to know why I did it. I had to come clean and hope he would understand and we could find a way to move forward. It wasn't like I slept with the surfer, it was just a kiss. So I told him it wasn't my intention to hurt him. I just needed something more in my life. He was always busy for me or our kids. The only time he would spend time with us was during dinner or with the kids, not me. Even our bedroom activities were no longer exciting or affectionate. Instead of understanding my concerns, he started swearing at me. He said I'd always been like this, calling me selfish and reckless. The worst part was that he said he was regretting ever marrying me and that he should have known better than to marry me. If only he'd listened to his friends, none of this would have happened. I had no comeback to what he was saying, given how hurt I was. I was really upset. I thought to myself that his friends had once told him not to marry me. I didn't understand why. I knew I was a bit forward and somehow reckless, but I had never cheated on Marcus since we started dating. I loved him too much to do him like that. I felt really sad as I realized that. My marriage was over. Marcus had never been a good husband, especially since he started his restaurant and hotel businesses. I had always hoped that he would change, but it seemed that he was just like all the other men, using and discarding women when they no longer served their purposes. He said that he couldn't trust me anymore, and that he wanted a divorce. I couldn't let him go. I felt like he was being unfairly critical of me, especially given that I had only made one mistake. I tried to reason with him and apologize, but I couldn't let Jake damage my marriage and my family like that. I had to try to explain to him what had led me to do what I did. I mean, as much as I had done him wrong, he had also been absent and focused on his businesses. He knew I would never hurt him intentionally, but I also needed to find myself. We started dating when we were very young, so I didn't know how it felt to be with another male. I was devastated. I had never expected this to happen, and I didn't know how to react. I tried to explain to my husband that Jake and I only kissed once, and that the only thing I did wrong with Jake was I told him I still loved him, and didn't want to lose him over a stranger we'd met on our trip. But he'd already made up his mind. He said I'd never find another man who loved me like he did. He called me foolish for chasing my own desires without thinking. I knew the consequences, and they were true, but I'd only done that once. My mind and heart couldn't accept that my husband had left me for a silly mistake I'd made. If I'd known the anniversary trip was our last, I wouldn't have gone. I wouldn't have done what I did. But we can't undo what's done. It was already done and there was no going back. I was heartbroken. I had lost the man I loved and the life we had built together. I was left with nothing but a deep sadness and a sense of confusion. But as a few months passed, I began to realize that the separation between my husband and me had given me a chance to rediscover myself. Even though it had been a struggle to cope with the loss of my husband and the guilt of my infidelity, I had always put my family and my marriage first, but now I had the chance to focus on myself and my own needs. Marcus was my first love, my first everything. We even got married, and I never even had time to enjoy my youth and find myself in what I loved. This resulted in I didn't even go to college. I moved in with him, and he proposed right after I graduated from high school. I knew that my marriage was over the day Marcus saw me kissing Jake, but it was hard to let go because of the memories of our past love and the pain of my present situation. I spent months trying to come to terms with what I'd done. I realized that my mistake or infidelity had not only cost me my marriage, but also my self-respect. I felt lost and alone with no direction or purpose. I started drinking and going out a lot, getting reckless. I woke up in a hospital bed, really depressed and shut off. I knew I needed to make amends and find a way to heal, not only for myself but for my children too. I had been distant from them for months. I hadn't seen them for months. I'd even stopped making plans to see them since they were living with Marcus's family. I'd neglected my children, which was wrong of me. So I started taking surfing lessons again and found that I loved the feeling of the waves and the rush of adrenaline. I also started exploring my own interests and hobbies. I also found a whole new side to myself that I hadn't known existed. One day, while I was out for a run, I saw a flyer for a surfing competition at the nearby beach. I decided to go along, hoping to find some closure and maybe even see her former lover again. I couldn't enter the competition as I was still learning, but I watched. Watching other surfers ride the waves made me fall more in love with the sport. I felt a sense of peace wash over me. I then realized that my love for Marcus was still strong and that I needed to fight for our marriage. The divorce was not yet finalized and I still had a chance to at least try and make my marriage work. I went back to work with a newfound determination. I reached out to Marcus and asked for forgiveness. I promised to do whatever it took to regain his trust and love. I loved this man. He was my first everything, my first kiss, my virginity breaker, my best friend, my strength. Without him, I knew that I had made the biggest mistake. I was at my lowest point. I felt like I couldn't go on without my strength. I was struggling so much that I even thought about taking drugs. But I would think of him and how he would feel if he found out. Or if our children saw or found out that their mother was acting like a junkie. I begged Marcus. He was hesitant at first, but he eventually agreed to give our marriage another chance. I was really happy to have the opportunity to prove myself and be with my family again. I was glad that he didn't tell his family about our separation. I won't lie and say the separation didn't help me because it did help me a lot. It gave me time to find myself and think about what I wanted to do with my life. I had to think about what I wanted to do with my life. I didn't have any college qualifications, but I discovered hidden skills and talents, including surfing. Over the next few months, I worked hard to rebuild my relationship with Marcus. I was really determined to make it work, so I attended therapy sessions and read self-help books. I read lots of self-help books since I'd become an alcoholic. I realized I was an addict, so I needed all the help I could get and to make amends for my infidelity. Marcus was also trying to heal and move forward. I was glad that he was willing to meet me halfway and get to the bottom of everything. We both knew that our love was worth fighting for, and we were determined to make it work, even though it became a huge struggle to regain his trust again, especially around men. I was glad that he was trying. As the months passed, our love began to heal, and it got stronger. We learned to communicate openly and honestly, to trust each other again, and to appreciate the beauty of our second chance at love. We realized that our marriage was not a destination but a journey, and we were grateful to be on that journey together, even though we faced a bit of a roller coaster because of our past. As much as I was the one who was wrong in the whole thing, he also realized that he was also at fault, and that he didn't have to leave me in Portugal, especially on our anniversary holiday, to attend work. We had put in a lot of effort, but it all came to nothing on one fateful day. I was busy spending quality time with my family when I received a call from an unknown number. It was Jake. I didn't know what was wrong, so I asked him what he wanted. He told me he loved me. Marcus and I had started to put our phones on loudspeakers whenever we got calls from unknown or unsaved numbers if we were spending time together, so I didn't know what to do during the call. I saw Marcus's face change immediately from happy to furious. He got pretty angry and threw my phone against the wall. I didn't know what to do. Luckily, the children weren't in the room. I asked what was going on and why he was angry. He started swearing at me and asking about Jake. I told him that nothing was going on and I didn't even know where. Jake got my number because we didn't exchange numbers when we were in Portugal. He didn't believe me and said I'd been making him a fool all this time. He shouldn't have given me another chance. I tried reasoning with him, but he didn't believe me. I just couldn't believe that after so many times we were trying to fix our marriage and renew our love. Jake decided to call right when my relationship with my husband was back to where it was. You know when they say someone was followed by a very dark cloud? Or maybe I just had bad luck. Marcus was convinced that I'd been in a relationship with Jake the whole time, so he decided to continue with the divorce. He moved out of the house just 3 days later. I got a call from our family lawyer asking if I was in the house so she could come through. After some time, she arrived to serve me with divorce papers. I knew there and then that there was no more turning back. My marriage was done and dusted, and there was really nothing I would have done to fix it this time around. All thanks to Jake for breaking up. My marriage was over because of someone I'd kissed a couple of times. He decided to fall for me, and some people just don't have a sense of humor. Jake was a great guy, but I hated him for being the reason why my marriage was over. If he hadn't called, none of that would have happened. He was a nice guy, but he wasn't thinking. Marcus and I weren't married under community property, so I was left with nothing. There was nothing I could do about it. He was nice enough to leave me a house and a car though. He bought them under my name, so I'd be grateful if he'd make a fair decision on joint custody. I'd like to keep the children and visit him wherever he is. I'm grateful for everything he gave me. He loved me, and if I could take back everything, I'd take back the time I spent with Marcus. I still regret the mistake I made because it destroyed my marriage and my family. Now, I live for myself and my children. My surfing skills have improved and I've started looking for competitions. It was time to move on and start anew. I couldn't dwell on the past. So far, life has been good to me, even with Jake. He hadn't called, and I was really grateful for that because I didn't want anything to do with him. I'm still not sure if I made the right decision to let my husband go like that, and I'm still trying to figure out the best way to handle the Jake situation. I'd love to get some advice on how I should have dealt with the issue.